right, good evening, everybody. We are so glad to have you guys here for our second virtual webinar series this evening. We're going to talk about how to keep your project healthy. So some tips and tricks to keep your project healthy as you go through the project year this year. So that's exciting. And I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Bernie O'Rourke. I'm the Youth Extension Livestock Specialist here at UW-Madison. So I work in the Department of Animal and Dairy Sciences at Madison, but I also have an extension appointment. So many of your local county extension leaders and FFA teachers, I work with all of them quite a bit on youth education. So we're glad you're here tonight. If you do have questions of our speakers, we'd like you to put them in either the Q&A that's on the bottom or in the chat. Either way is fine. Just put it in questions that you might have as we go along. Hopefully, you're visiting and viewing with your parents as we have the meeting tonight because it's really always nice to have your parents along with you learning as you go so you can kind of talk about the way you manage your project at home and how you can be on the same page. So, if that is available to you all tonight, that'd be wonderful. Again, if you could keep our your chat and your comments really strictly to the topic tonight, that would be great. We wanted to have a fun evening, and we want to make sure everybody is able to get the information they came here for tonight. All right. So tonight we're going to talk, like I mentioned, about keeping your animal project healthy. And then the last one in April will be on charcuterie boards. So building your own, and it will be just in time for the holiday. If you celebrate Easter, you could bring it to whatever holiday type of event you have. So we'll teach you about how to put cheese and meat products like salami and fruit and vegetables and jam and honey and all these kinds of fun stuff that you can build on your own. And so if you're interested in doing that, just keep in touch with us and keep abreast of these types of things in the webpage, and we'll tell you what you need to bring and what you need to have at home to be ready for the last one in April. All right. And then the last thing before we kind of really go into our speakers is if you are looking to get some educational credit from your county for this type of session, there is a link to a form that you can fill out to turn into your fairs and your local extension offices. However, they may or may not accept them. We just put on the programs, and it's kind of up to your local fairs in which they require certain one of these virtual webinars. Okay. And here are some links if you want to keep in touch. I'll put those all on the website, and most of them are there already. And then the last thing tonight, we do want you to fill out just a quick little survey about what you learned tonight. And it just helps us get ideas from what other types of topics you want to learn about as we prepare for next year. All right. So, again, so glad you are here. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gretchen May. Dr. May is works for DATCAP. She is one of the veterinarians on staff there that does a lot of work in the rules and policy, but also education of producers, all livestock enterprise. People we have in the state to guide them in the right direction. So it was, of course, no question that we would invite Dr. May to come talk to you about projects and tips and how to set your project off on the right step this year. So, Dr. May, are you ready to go?
I am.
Nice.
All right, so I'll just go ahead and share my screen then. All right, and just confirming that you guys can see that. Okay.
Yes.
So as Bernie mentioned, my name is Gretchen May, and I'm a veterinarian working with the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. And we're going to talk today about animal biosecurity, specifically as it relates to fairs and shows. Yep, and hold on, we'll see if I can get this to advance here. There we go. All right. So what is biosecurity? Biosecurity are precautions, and I like to think of them as specifically actions or steps that I can take to minimize the risk of introducing an infectious disease, which you also might hear referred to as germs, infectious agents, pathogens. There's lots of different ways to define those to your animals and keep them healthy. What are infectious diseases or these pathogens that we're talking about? I have a different list or a few different lists here of different categories of infectious agents. And for the purpose of this talk, these aren't really very important. I just put these here to give you an idea if you're interested in what some common diseases are and what categories that they fall into. But essentially, these are agents that cause disease and can be spread from animal to animal, or people to people, or animal to people, and so on. So just kind of going this back a little bit, taking a step back, some of this might be something that you all know about, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, just talking a little bit about how infectious diseases are spread. If we have an animal that's infected with the disease, these little red dots are intended to show disease. The way that that animal removes that infectious agent from its body or spreads it into the environment are several, and it depends on which specific agent that we're talking about. But sometimes they're inhaling or breathing out these different types of germs. They can also be secreted into the saliva, so they can be in the drool or the saliva of the animal. They can be in tears associated with the eyes. And if we've got some skin lesions that are related to infectious diseases, they can be found in the crusts or the scabs associated with those as well. You can find some in milk. So when the animals are being milked, the organisms can be expressed that way. Or if there's dripping of milk between milkings, that's another way that those get out of the infected animal. Urine and feces or manure are another way that these organisms are spread out into the environment. And then there can be reproductive ways as well. These germs can be in the animals from breeding. And if a mother animal has a baby still inside of her, the baby can get infected that way too. And those tissues that are expelled after the mother gives birth, those can have infectious agents there as well. So all of these germs or bacteria, viruses, all these different things, they can hitch rides on dust, moisture droplets in the air, drool, droppings, milk, hair, skin, scabs, and debris. And then when we have our uninfected animal, the way they can be exposed to these agents is when they're breathing in, when they're ingesting, whether that's eating food or just kind of chewing or sucking on things that are in the environment. Again, reproductive ways through breeding, and when the babies are in their mom still, they can be exposed to infectious diseases. And then during milking too. And another way that we can be passing diseases from infected to non-infected animals if we're using needles that haven't been sterilized or that are being used from one animal to another. That can be a way to pass those organisms along too. So these infectious diseases can be transmitted from one animal to another when they're having direct contact with each other, whether that's sharing a pen, it could be having a pen side by side with another animal, or even potentially some exposure in the show ring. And then another way that these infectious diseases are spread are through what we call indirect contact. So when we have an animal that's infected and we're using some kind of equipment on them, whether that's a halter or lead rope, grooming equipment, food and water pails, if we're hauling them in a trailer, if we're putting one animal in a pen that was previously occupied by another animal, and even on ourselves with our footwear, our clothing, and our hands, If those organisms are getting on any of these other things and those come in contact with an uninfected animal, there can be that spread of disease to that animal as well. So coming back to these specific steps or actions that we can take to minimize our risks, what we're trying to do is we're trying to interrupt those opportunities of transmission from animal to animal, whether that's those direct contacts between animals or whether we're talking about those equipment type situations where one infected animal is exposed to equipment and then that equipment is exposed to another animal. And so these are the opportunities that we have to try and identify practices or steps that we can take to try to interrupt that transmission cycle. And the difficulty with this can be that our infected animal might not be sick. So it might look like it's a perfectly healthy animal, but it could still be shedding disease organisms. So we have to kind of always treat all of these animals as if there could be some potential for disease transmission. So again, boiling it down to the basics, remember that these germs, when they get expelled out into the environment, they are hitching rides on dust, moisture droplets in the air, things like milk, hair, skin, scabs, etc. And then we come in contact with those, or equipment comes in contact with those. And so those organisms hitch rides, and those are the ways that we can spread these diseases. And what we're trying to do with our biosecurity is prevent both the introduction of disease organisms into our herds or flocks. And then if we should have an organism that does get introduced, what are some steps that we can take to try and prevent the spread of that disease within the herd or flock? And this is important because we want to protect animal health. We want to protect your investment. You put a lot of time and energy and financial investment into these animals, and we want to keep that safe. And then we're talking about livestock here. So they are part of the food supply and they're important for human health as well. This is an example. This picture is an old picture. It is an example of what is not biosecurity. We've got a bunch of people here who probably came from lots of different places and they're spending time in someone's barn, spending time by the feed troughs. One person has their foot up there on kind of the bunk area. And this is not what we would consider good biosecurity. But this level of security, working in a lab and having everything be sterile, is not always practical either. When we're going to the fair, we are bringing animals together, and there's always a risk of disease transmission in those situations. But the fair is not only fun, but it's a wonderful learning experience. You guys learn a lot with that. And so we want to be able to go to the fair, but what steps can we take to minimize our risk? First of all, good biosecurity is practiced every day. So sometimes we think of biosecurity as happening only at the time that we're taking our animals to the fair. But really, it starts long before then. If you are purchasing your fair animals, when you're bringing them home, it's important to be thinking about biosecurity then. When you're raising them as you're preparing for fair, it's important to be practicing biosecurity at that time. Of course, when you're taking your animals to the fair and if you're bringing them back home, that's an important time too. And then if you incorporate those animals back into your herd or flock, it's still important to continue practicing biosecurity.
So when you have your cows in the barn, do you want them to be more separate when you're like breaking them?
When you're breaking them, like to milk,
No, like to get them ready for the fair.
oh, to get them ready for the fair. So it depends. So if they are from your own herd and they're part of your own herd, then they're already used to those same organisms that might be on your farm and you know that your animals are healthy. So in that case, you can keep them together. But if you brought them from somewhere else, at least for a short period of time, it's good to keep them separate from the rest of your animals to make sure they're going to be healthy before you add them back into the rest of the animals. And we'll actually touch on that a little bit in a couple of slides. That's a good question. So this slide here, again, it's not really important to remember at this point in time all of these different diseases that I've got listed here. What's important to know is just that different animals get different diseases. Also, that there can be different disease situations going on at your farm or in the area where you live. And all of those different situations would cause you to be more aware of different types of steps that you might have to take. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. Your facilities might be different from someone else's. You might have different equipment available to you. So when I talk about all these steps, these are really just ideas to get you started. And your individual situation might be different or specific. You might be able to find different ways to achieve the same purpose and interrupt those disease transmissions. So if you are purchasing animals from someone else and bringing them home to your home herd, some things that you can do is to first work with your veterinarian. And this could be really any expert as well. If you know someone from UW Extension or your fair supervisor, they can help you to figure out what might be diseases that you might need to be concerned about on your farm or in your area. And then it's important to know the health status of the source of the animals that you're getting. In your specific situation, you might have a need or desire to have any new animals tested for certain diseases, and that's going to be on a farm by farm basis, depending on what your needs are. No matter what the situation is, though, it's always helpful to know the specific vaccination history of the animals that you purchase and bring home.
Why do animals have different diseases?
It's just that there are different diseases in the environment and they happen to get exposed to different things. So they just happen to be in different areas. And then they can sometimes get spread when those animals move around or when equipment and people move around. Some other things that you can do to reduce your risk is to buy open females or unbred males. This reduces your risk of having those reproductive types of infectious diseases. And then if you have a home herd or flock, it's nice if you can source your fair animals from your own herd or flock. That just reduces your risk of bringing in new types of diseases. But if you do decide that you're going to purchase animals from another location, trying to reduce the sources that you are getting them from can be really helpful. So ideally, just getting them from one source or the smallest number of source herds or flocks that you can is best. And then when you're picking up and delivering those animals that you purchased and you're bringing them back to your herd, some things to think about the trailer and yourself actually too as you're going to and from other farms. This here talks about initially unloading the animals, but this would be important or pertinent to loading the animals as well. So if you can do this safely, you want to load and unload your own animals without letting anyone else on the trailer or truck. So that would be ideal. Obviously, if there's a safety issue, then you need to be safe about what you're doing. But if you can avoid allowing other people on your trailer or truck when you're loading and unloading, that can be really helpful. Cleaning and disinfecting is very helpful too. So if you're going to another farm to pick up the animals, it's nice if you can clean and disinfect your truck and trailer and wear clean clothes and boots before you leave your farm to go to someone else's farm to pick up those animals so that you're not bringing diseases to that farm. And then, of course, when you get back, cleaning and disinfecting the truck and trailer, including the tires, any boots or equipment that you used, taking care of your clothing, so changing that and washing it in the washing machine at the hottest water option. And always washing and sanitizing hands is really helpful. And then if you can, provide a separate loading area. If you're having someone else bring those animals to you and haul them for you, if you can provide a separate loading area for them so that they're not going into your animal areas as much as possible, that's ideal. So here are the basic steps for cleaning and disinfection for not only trucks and trailers and equipment, but also surfaces. The first four steps here are for cleaning. So you want to remove all the dirt, manure, and bedding, and then soak and scrub with a soapy solution. Rinse it really well, and then allow it to dry. Now, I have to admit for myself, I do tend, because of time or whatever, to want to skip some of these steps, but they're actually all really important. The cleaning steps, first of all, they do reduce how many organisms are in an area in and of itself, even before applying a disinfectant. So it's important to do that. But also, dirt and manure and the soap solution can all deactivate your disinfectant. So if you haven't cleaned everything well and you haven't rinsed it well, your disinfectant isn't going to work as well. And then allowing it to dry, if you're leaving things wet and then applying your disinfectant, that can sometimes affect the concentration of your disinfectant or how much disinfectant actually is there. And that can affect how well it works too. So all of those steps are actually really important. And then you apply your disinfectant and you let it sit for the length of time it's needed. Rinse if needed, and that's dependent on the disinfectant that you use, and then allow it to dry. And here are just some examples of some disinfectants. All of these are pretty readily available. Some, like the bleach, the Lysol, and Purell, you can probably get even at your grocery store or Walmart. And these others like Rocal and Novasan, again, these are just some examples here. There are others that are available too, but those are available at most of your farm stores like Farm and Fleet. And when using these disinfectants, it's really important to read the label to make sure that you're diluting it correctly, to make sure that you even can use these in animal areas, that it's safe to do that, to make sure you're leaving the disinfectant in contact with the surface that you want to disinfect for an appropriate length of time. And there might even be some human safety indications on the label, like maybe you should be wearing gloves or some respiratory protection. And then when you get home with your animals, this is what we were just talking about with the question previously. When you first bring them home, that's when it's the most important time to try to isolate them from the rest of your animals. I've seen different timeframes recommended for this, anywhere from 2 weeks to 1 month. Some of that might be dependent on specific diseases that you are concerned about. So again, working with some of those experts to try and help you determine the best time length for you. And some of it might also be practical. You know, if you can't keep these animals isolated and separate for a whole month, if you can at least do it for 2 weeks, that can be really helpful too. Most diseases, you'll kind of see them pop up within that time frame. And when you're isolating them, this is again where your specific situation is going to vary. If you have an off-farm location or a separate farm away from your regular herd that you can keep these animals, that is best. Otherwise, on your own farm, if you have a separate shed or barn, that would be next best. And if you don't have that available, keeping them in the same barn, but trying to segregate them and keep them away from the rest of your herd within your existing barn would be another option for you. When you're doing that, if you're keeping them in the same barn, just be aware of traffic, whether it's foot traffic or vehicle traffic like skid steers, and try not to go from the new animals to your existing animals in a way that you can spread those diseases. And the other thing to be aware of with that would be ventilation. So if you've got a barn with maybe fans that are bringing in area or bringing in air on one side, and blowing over all the animals and exiting at another side. Ideally, your new animals would be on the side of the barn where that air is exiting and not at the intake end of the barn. With these animals, between the new ones and your existing herd or flock, you don't want to share any feeding, watering, or grooming equipment. And same thing with vehicles, trying not to share skid steers if possible, being aware of tractor movements, and wearing separate clothing and footwear. And if you do have to share those types of equipment, which sometimes you do, as much cleaning and disinfecting between groups would be very helpful in that way. Retesting here. So you may not need to be doing any testing or retesting before you add your new animals into the rest of your herd, but some of you may decide that that is beneficial for you for certain diseases. So just being aware that that might be something that might be beneficial for you. And then, of course, monitoring your new animals and making sure that they remain healthy, that they're eating well and they've got good energy. And only introducing those new animals back to your existing animals only when you're sure that they are not spreading disease. All right, so now these animals are home and we're preparing for the show. Some of the most important things that you can do with your fair animals is to make sure that you're managing them well. And we're not going to go into details about this, but providing good nutrition, clean pens and feeding areas, providing adequate space and avoiding overcrowding, providing good ventilation, and working with your veterinarian to see what kind of vaccinations and deworming might be needed. These are all ways to keep your animals healthy, and healthy animals have stronger immune systems and they're better able to fight off these diseases should they be exposed to them. You also want to practice. Of course, you all are working with your animals, and that gets you ready for the show, puts you in a good spot to do well. And it also helps to reduce stress at the time of the show. If those animals are used to being worked, then it's not as stressful for them when they're doing that at the show. And stress can decrease the immune system and cause them to be more susceptible to diseases. You want to
Would you want
prepare? What?
would you want different cleaning supplies for different animals?
Um, Not necessarily. It kind of depends. It usually depends more on the types of diseases that you're worried about. So if there are usually a lot of those disinfectants that we talked about are pretty what we call broad spectrum, and they work against lots of different diseases. So usually you can use one of those disinfectants for multiple species, assuming that they're acceptable to use in animal spaces. There can be times though when you have a specific disease like tuberculosis might be an example where some of those disinfectants may not work as well, and so you might have to look for a special disinfectant in those special cases. But for general biosecurity, if you are not worried about something specific, you can just use a general disinfectant, and it's usually going to be acceptable from species to species. Preparing your paperwork, preparing a biosecurity plan and practicing it, studying and being ready to show, being aware of any regulations that you might need to follow. And that can be both on a statewide basis as well as the show specifically can have their own requirements as well. That's kind of the state and the show's way of incorporating their own biosecurity practices. And then prepare to have adequate clean and disinfected supplies to bring with you so that you're not bringing germs from your farm to the fair to expose other animals, and also so that you don't have to borrow equipment from other people. And then when you're on the farm, you want to try and just, again, prevent exposure that might come up from other areas, limiting access to animal or animal feed areas by any visitors that might be coming in. If there are visitors that need to access those areas, and there are definitely people who come to your farm that might need to access those areas, you could perhaps provide them with some coveralls and or some footwear that they could wear while they're on your farm, or maybe they wear their own clean clothes and footwear when they're visiting. Providing hand sanitizer or cleaning equipment. Again, avoiding sharing equipment, not only between groups of animals, but potentially between farms. If you have a neighbor who might need to borrow some equipment, if there's a way to avoid that, that's best. And if not, cleaning and disinfecting between those episodes. And the same precautions that we took with our new fair animals would be precautions that we would take anytime we're adding new animals onto the farm. And then don't take sick animals to the fair. You want your animals to be healthy with a good appetite and energy and moving easy, free, and smoothly. Signs of illness might include coughing, sneezing, or breathing hard, diarrhea, limping, drooling, fever and depression, a poor appetite, and skin lesions that might look like sores, crusting, or a rash.
Don't cows just drool in general?
What was that?
Don't cows just drool in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. So if it's normal for your herd, if it's normal for those animals and it's not an increased amount, that would be acceptable. But if all of a sudden there is increased amounts of drooling, that would be cause of concern. So while we're at the show, the steps that we can take here are very similar to what we've already been talking about. We can try to minimize direct contact with other livestock. That might not always be completely possible to eliminate that entirely, but as much as we can minimize it as possible. If we've got animals that are in pens that are right next to each other, maybe there are ways that we can create a little bit of a barrier so that they can't have nose-to-nose contact or be chewing on the same fences between them. Minimizing contact with manure, avoiding the sharing of feed, buckets, halters, and other equipment,
What if
keeping.
you're sharing like a section, like you're in the same sections with your other cows?
Yeah, so you can't avoid that entirely when you're going to the fair. So again, just trying to minimize any direct nose-to-nose contact if there's a way that you can do it. And you might not be able to, but if you can, that's something that you can try to look for when you're at the fair. Keeping aisles wide and neat. This just keeps things like sawdust and hay and things like that that might be infected with these infectious organisms or contaminated with infectious organisms away from your animals. Minimizing stress, like we talked about earlier, stress can decrease the immune system and make our animals more susceptible. So as much as we can minimize that, the better. And then this is a hard one. I know for people, I always have to stick my hands in my pockets when I'm walking through the aisle so that I don't reach out and touch animals. But preventing and limiting other people from touching or handling your animals is ideal if you can do that. And of course, while you're at the fair, you want to monitor your animal's health a couple times a day and make sure that they're still eating well and that they still are feeling well.
What if your cow's like tame and you let the people pet it?
What if what? And you let them pet them?
What if your cow's really tame and you like let people let it pet it?
So ideally, you wouldn't do that because they may have pet another cow or another calf and then come and pet your calf, and then they could be spreading some disease. But what you could do if you really wanted to do that is you could have some hand sanitizer there and you could have them sanitize their hands before they touch your calf. And then they could touch your calf and then have them sanitize their hands again after they're done. So that could be an option too. Better to not let them do it. But if you're going to do it or if they're a friend of yours or something like that, you could have them use some hand sanitizer and have that ready perhaps for them to use. Zoonotic diseases, these are diseases that animals can get that they can give to people. And this is not intended to be a full list here, but these are some diseases that animals can get that people can get from animals. E. coli, Campylobacter, Salmonella, Erysipelathrix, the swine and avian influenzas, and ringworm. And we also want to be practicing biosecurity to prevent those disease transmissions from animals to us as well. So again, keeping those aisles wide and neat, avoiding eating and drinking in the livestock areas as well as sleeping, and washing hands not only before eating, but really anytime after you're handling animals, it's a good idea to wash and or sanitize your hands. If your animal does become sick, contact the fair veterinarian. And then after the fair, when you're going back home, I won't go over these in detail, but these are the same things that we talked about when you're bringing new animals home that you've purchased. So all those same things about loading and unloading, cleaning and disinfecting, and providing separate loading areas. And this is all the same too. When you're coming back from the fair, if you're bringing your animals back with you, same thing about isolation, potentially retesting if that's applicable to you, monitoring your animals and only introducing them back to the rest of your herd when you're sure that they're not spreading disease. So in summary, biosecurity relies on controlled access to your animals, both of people and equipment, as well as other animals. Using protective wear, protective boots, clothing that you can clean and put in the washing machine, cleaning and disinfecting equipment and surfaces, trailers, tires, isolation, isolating new animals when you're either introducing them to your herd or reintroducing them back after they're coming back from the fair. And depending on your situation, testing and vaccination. And then just a reminder that biosecurity is management. Again, it's specific steps that we can take to avoid hauling disease home, borrowing disease, spreading disease around. We want to try to keep that all at a distance and keep everything clean and know the warning signs. And this last slide here are just some resources. So we have on our website here at DACCAP the home basic biosecurity information. On this webpage, there is a lot of additional links to other biosecurity resources that you can check out. And you can Google DACCAP biosecurity, and that should be the first thing that comes up. We have on that website a few YouTube videos about biosecurity. Right now on the website, those are referred to as farm biosecurity practices, but if you click on that, you will see a set of 3 different videos, and one of those is specific for movements to the fair. And then the Center for Food Security and Public Health is also a really great resource. There's a lot of information here on animal diseases. There is a tab once you get to the main website on prevention, which includes additional information on biosecurity. There is information there on disinfectants, and there are some downloadable signs that you can use for biosecurity on your farm. And then there's another tab there that's called Preparedness and Response. And this is where you can find links to the secure food supply plans. And there are secure food supply plans for cattle, for swine, for poultry, and for sheep. So this is a really great source of information. Actually, I'll come back here and we can leave that up for a second.
All right. Well, thanks, Dr. May, for that great presentation. We're going to hold questions just a little bit longer till the end here. I have Julie with us from Wisconsin Livestock Identification Consortium, and she's just going to tell us a little bit about um, ear tags and tagging and just the premise registration that you'll need to have to be prepared to go to the county fair or any fair in Wisconsin for that matter. And I'm going to pass this over to Julie, and once Julie has shared here, we will go into questions. So, hang on to those questions for Dr. May, and we'll hit those after Julie's presentation. Thank you. So, Julie, are you on? Yep,
Oh, I'm sorry. I just needed to find the unmute button. So
there you go. All
just
right.
making sure everyone's paying attention, I guess, you know?
Thanks, Julie.
No problem. All right. So like Bernie had mentioned, and thank you so much, Dr. May. I have worked with Dr. May quite a bit in our position here at WLAC. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about premise registration and what you need to know to make sure you have no issues on your way to the fair. So a little bit about WLAC. WLIC stands for the Wisconsin Livestock Identification Consortium. We are a private, nonprofit organization where we work to protect the animal health and prevent the spread of disease through livestock and premises identification and traceability. To break that down a little bit, let's talk about what is traceability. So the formal definition of traceability is the ability to track and document the history, application, or location of an item, process, or system, ensuring a record of its journey from origin to end user. So often when people talk about traceability in our food supply, they're really concerned about where the food was produced, where it went, and how it got to our table. Traceability with the term of animal diseases is really about where the animal started and where it all traveled before it ended up where it is and ended up having a disease. So if the animal gets sick with a major disease, there's a list of a couple that the Department of Agriculture here in Wisconsin and the US would be really concerned about. If any of those diseases show up, and we have a way to know where that animal was, whether they went to livestock shows, went to the local county fair or state fair, and if it traveled across state lines, there's certain documentation where the premises ID appears, and that allows officials like Dr. May to know where it came in contact with other animals and touched other surfaces, like we just learned about how important biosecurity is. So why WLAC? Just to touch on this briefly, WLAC is not the same as DACCAP. We are not a government agency. Our primary focus is registering premises. So working with individuals like yourself, preparing to take animals to the county fair or to another show. We also are sure to register everybody in the state of Wisconsin that has livestock. We are actually not impacted by the Public Information Act. So a little tidbit is that in certain scenarios, people can reach out to the Department of Agriculture and ask for information. When it comes to premises registration, that information is kept strictly confidential, not only by our contract with the Department of Agriculture, but it's actually written in the administrative code for the law. Moving beyond some of that exciting stuff, let's talk about what actually is considered cattle, or livestock, I should say. What is actually considered livestock here in the state of Wisconsin? So of course, there's beef cattle, dairy cattle. You also have your pigs, goats, and sheep. Chickens are also considered livestock, but bison, as well as llamas and alpacas, are considered livestock. If you happen to pass by a deer farm, an elk, moose, caribou, reindeer farm, those are also considered forms of livestock that need to be registered with our agency. Chickens, of course, I had just said that, but even if an individual only has one backyard chicken and then they're in the middle of a city, we need to know that they happen to have poultry. Other variations of poultry, other captive game birds, ratites, which is known as emus, horses, mules, and donkeys, as well as fish. So if you happen to know someone that maintains a fish farm or a fish pond, those folks also need to register with WLIC. So a little bit deeper about that. Who needs to register? We just talked about all the people that happen to have livestock. They need to register and get a premises ID. But all these other folks need to register as well. Like we just talked about with Dr. May. When it comes to biosecurity, it doesn't just matter about who owns the animal, but the ways that people can come into contact with animals. So veterinarian offices need to register. Livestock markets, even truckers need to register if they haul cattle. Anyone who sells ear tags, so that includes WLAC, testing labs, slaughterhouses, pond owners, all the county fairs, expos, and circuses need to register. Even that country store down the road that might only have reindeer for the Christmas season, they need to register. No matter how small of an instance they would have any type of animals, we need to know that they have come into contact with them. Okay, registering your livestock premises. It is very easy and painless to register. The easiest way to do it is to go online to our website, which is wiid.org, better known as Wisconsin Identification.org. And myself and my two colleagues actually process these online registrations. So you will have your premises ID emailed to you then or sent via mail within 1 to 3 business days. Email is by far the fastest using the online form. You can also go online and print the paper form and mail it in, or you could call our office directly at the phone number listed there. I'll be sure to share that information again. So as a commonly asked question, what if my livestock lives somewhere else? That's completely okay. That means that the owner's name needs to stay in the registration and you use their premises ID. The premises ID does not need to have your name. It needs to have the actual premises ID from the location where your animals come from. So first and foremost, you want to ask the owner of that animal what their premises ID is, or the owner of that property. If you're having any issues, feel free to call our office and we can answer any questions, or feel free to submit the online form known as the premises retrieval form, which is very easy to find on our main page. It is important to note, premises addresses need to be of the address where the animals live, not your address. So even though all your mail comes into your home address, but your say your dairy cows live at your Uncle Tom's, you need to use your Uncle Tom's premises ID. If you have animals at more than one location, the premises ID will have to be different for those animals. But that's easy enough to simply keep organized and to have that written down. Especially for you guys, I've created this flyer to help you understand a little bit more about some of the ins and outs. I also have this fancy QR code where you can go online and access that online form. Easy peasy. I'll be sure to share this with Bernie and she'll be sure to get it to all of you. So overall, as a quick recap, WLIC is very unique. We are the only nonprofit individual organization in the US. Overall, the data that we keep equips individuals like Dr. May with information at their fingertips. So a couple things can happen. They quickly can gather information in a matter of minutes instead of hours or days on who might be impacted and where livestock had traveled. Where did this animal travel recently is really the question that they're trying to understand so that they can involve the right people that might be impacted. They can also quickly tell producers in the area if outbreak for animal disease happens down the road, people living within a few miles of a radius will be impacted on how they can travel with their animals and maybe other things that they need to do. And very clearly they'll need to change their biosecurity, knowing the risk of a certain animal disease is increased drastically. And overall, this information simply helps give those animal health officials the ability to quickly reduce the risk where possible. So we really don't have to worry about the breakout of certain diseases because they have the information they need. So how can you help? Well, in 2025, this year, we are actually in a renewal year where everybody that has ever registered with the state to have a premises ID needs to contact WLAC and update their information. So while you might not have any animals on your farm or on your location where you live, you will want to make sure that where your animals are kept, that they update their premises registration. Things like, did they get a new email address? Are they still the landowner? Is there a new cell phone number? Are there more animals on the property that need to be added to the registration? Little things like that are important to make sure are updated on their registration. And in case I didn't mention it, registration is free. There is no cost to updating or registering any type of premises at all. Like I said before, it's very easy to do that by going online. That website again is wiid.org, or you can call us at that number there, 888-808-1910. We're working to renew all the premises that we can for livestock owners before July 31st. So many of you might actually need to get this information ahead of time. If you could call me tomorrow and make sure all your information's up to date, that would be fantastic. Overall, your help is vital to ensure your information remains up to date. And that is all that I have overall. I'll hand it back to you, Bernie, for any questions.
All right. There we go. So, thanks, Julie and Dr. May. At this point, I'm just kind of opening the floor. If people have questions, you can certainly unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can type it into the chat. Either way works great. Uh, Anybody out there want to ask a question? Nobody. Oh, people are shaking their head. They're bashful. Uh, okay. So the fair is coming up, Dr. May. So if they needed to contact the local veterinarian at their fair because their animal was maybe a little off or maybe just isn't eating, what might be their first step into locating who might be someone that can help them?
Well, if we are talking about the time going up to the fair, your regular herd veterinarian is probably the best person to contact. And if you don't have someone already, honestly, I would probably just go to Google and search veterinarians in my area and see who comes up. And you can also ask your other people in your area who they use, and they might have some good recommendations as well. And if you're talking about while you're at the fair should have a fair veterinarian that's assigned to be available at that fair. So you can talk with the fair superintendent might be a good source of someone who can tell you who to find and how to contact them while you're at the fair.
Yep, great. Like the superintendent, other, folks in your maybe club or chapter or group can help you. So just, connect with those people right around you, adults that you know will help, and then they'll help you with getting the right person too, especially when you're at the fair. Because there might not be a veterinarian like right there all the time. You'd have to wait till they came maybe to the fairgrounds or did rounds. There's different scenarios at each fair. So keep that in mind. All
This
right.
isn't
Oh, somebody had a question. Go ahead.
this isn't a question about like the thing, but do you have webinars every year?
Oh, I do. I do. I have webinars every year, and that one charcuterie where we get to be fun and creative
I'm gonna
in
be there.
April. You're going to be on it. Awesome, Hadley. Such great questions tonight too from you. Any other questions for the experts today? They've got lots of information, so don't hesitate to ask them. They're great resources for your adults, maybe your moms and dads, and family members, but they're also super great experts for you all getting into your projects. We're very glad you're in livestock projects. Lots of great things to learn, and livestock and animals always have a special place in our hearts because they teach us a lot of lessons and right you're going to have some great things and you're going to have some bummer things with animals, and sometimes it can be diseases, sometimes they don't want to train or work with you very well. But if they're sick or not feeling well, we've hope we've given you tips tonight on how to manage that and how to ask for help when you need some help on, when your animal's not feeling well. Okay. Well, it kind of looks like we're not getting many questions, guys, but that's okay. Some of you already got your projects, I would guess, right? With some of the beef you've had for a while. And so sheep and pigs are probably at your place or very, very soon, because we're kind of rounding up the buying time if you're ones that buy your animals. And so some of those shows that you might go to start in April for some that are going that early. So just keep these tips in mind and keep your project healthy, so you have a great time with your friends and your family. What do we put on our Sure. Yes. Dr. May would work great for the presentation's name. You could also put Julie Sweeney on there too. And I guess I would, again, these are all rules and policies that are dictated by your local fair. So, turn those things in and coordinate with them on what meets requirements and what may not. I just provide the educational experience for you all to come and join. Okay. Great question, Kayla. Okay, well, like I said in the browse or in the chat, when you close tonight, there'll be a window that opens up with a survey. If you could fill that out, that would be tremendous. That helps me know and understand if you learned anything tonight. But also just like what other ideas that you would like to jump on a webinar for, like what other things that interest you. So if you could let us know all that stuff and maybe have your moms and dads help you out with that a little bit, we'd love to hear from you. Let's give Dr. May and Julie a big hand, a big applause for being on with us tonight and giving us all the knowledge to be successful, right? So we gave them the round of applause. And yes, Dr. May and Julie, thanks so much for being our experts tonight. And we're looking forward to seeing your projects at the fairs, and good luck with all you do. All right. Good night, everybody.